Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Welcome to my podcast, A Gift for Grief. And today I am delighted to have Janice Thompson as my guest. Janice has combined her academic qualifications, which include a master's degree in psychology research, with her practical experience of working as a therapist and trainer. For the past 15 years, Janice has dedicated her work in helping those who are grieving. Janice has developed and facilitates grief training for practitioners, and she often runs workshops on grief and loss. Janice also organises grief retreats and leads an online grief cafe where those grieving can come together and share experiences. Janice speaks on various aspects of grief at conferences, and she has participated in a wide variety of podcasts. So welcome, Janice.
Well, thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Louise. That was beautiful. Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Now, we're both practitioners in a technique called the Emotional Freedom Techniques, commonly known as EFT and Matrix Reimprinting.
Yeah.
So, for the benefit of our listeners, would you like to explain what EFT and Matrix Reimprinting is?
I certainly will. So emotional freedom techniques, also known as tap-in, is a wonderful energy technique, as is Matrix Reimprinting, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the EFT is a beautiful technique to use, and it's so good to use with grief because it's so gentle, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later, I'm sure. But the EFT is actually a little bit like acupuncture, but no needles involved, and we just tap gently on certain acupressure points on the body, which helps clear any blocked energy. And how specifically that will work with grief is because if we get stuck in our grief, it's a process that we're supposed to work through, but if we get stuck in our grief, then those energy systems get blocked. So by tapping on the simplest level can help unblock that, and it can help us to move through our natural process of grieving that is, you know, obviously a normal process, but it can help us unstick grief that gets stuck. So it's a really gentle technique with no side effects. You can't over tap. You can tap with a practitioner to delve a little bit deeper sometimes for things that need some extra support and help. But you can also use it as a wonderful self-help tool. So it's an amazingly gentle, easy to do technique that is really powerful, and it uses the subconscious as well. So it'll bring things up into the conscious mind that are buried in the subconscious that, again, may have been stuck for years and years with grief, as I've worked with lots of clients where that's happened. So it's a wonderful technique. And moving on from that, has developed from one of the EFT masters, our wonderful friend Carl Dawson, has developed a Matrix Reimprinting, and that's just a development on from EFT, really, where we actually go to the time when we actually had certain traumas and actually work on that younger self, really. So we actually work at that place where the trauma actually was and do some tapping in those spaces. It's a lovely technique as well, and very gentle.
Yeah, and I can certainly vouch for it, because I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk about grief after my experience if I hadn't been able to work with EFT and Matrix. It's completely transformed me. So now,
Likewise.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you not only became a trainer in this technique, you also went on to specialise in grief and loss.
Yeah.
So perhaps you would like to share your story and also why you decided to specialise in this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time I was working in psychology research, teaching at degree level, as well as having my own personal training business, which was amazing. My work was going lovely, really was enjoying my work. And then quite out of the blue, my husband had a massive heart attack and died there and then. I was 35. I'd got 2 children. One was 14 and the other was 8. And that was it. Just literally here 1 minute and gone the next, which turned my world completely upside down, as my children and my family and friends. So for a long while, I just didn't know what to do. I had some conventional therapies, perhaps some talking therapies that helped to some degree. But I was just searching for what I could find to help me and thereby help my daughters. And I come across Reiki, which was lovely. That really helped.
Yeah.
And then I come across EFT, and that was a complete life changer for me. It was, almost stuck for words, which is very rare for me, as you well know, Louise. But it was... It really, it released a lot of stuff. It helped me with the grief, the loss of my dad when I was younger, because I'd got grief on top of grief, which is often known as complicated grief, as well, you know. And the EFT really helped to clear those blocked emotions, energies, and to really help me to build my life back up into what it is now, which is very, very different.
Yeah.
So amazingly helped me. So I changed my career and started practicing, working as a practitioner with EFT, and then eventually a trainer, because I knew how much it helped me and I wanted to help others then.
Fantastic. So losing your husband, Andy, very suddenly must have been very traumatic for you and your girls. And looking back now, with all your years of experience of working with grief and loss, could you understand the different types of grief you would have went through? So, for example, I imagine you experienced traumatic grief.
Yeah.
I did your practitioner's specialist grief training about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it really helped me. It helped me in my personal grief experience, just learning about the different types of grief. I began to understand what was going on for me, because when you're grieving, we're trying to make sense of something that makes no sense.
Absolutely.
But by understanding what grief is in its many forms, we can at least start to make sense of what's going on emotionally.
Yeah.
And you use some beautiful, gentle exercises that loosen the grief. And these exercises are in your new book, Joy Beyond Grief. Could you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you were saying, it can be really helpful for those grieving to understand, perhaps it is like, as you said, complicated grief, where you have grief on top of grief, which is so common. And then there's anticipatory grief, where perhaps someone's got a terminal illness. And sometimes it can be really helpful for people to identify with those different types of grief. It makes you feel like there's not anything wrong with you, that actually there is a name for this as well. So that can be quite helpful. So in my book, Joy Beyond Grief, I wrote that. Originally, I wasn't going to put anything about my story in it, and everyone I spoke to said you do need to, just so that people can understand that although every grief is different and every grief is unique, at least people can understand that you have experienced some form of grief yourself. So then, be more happy to pick it up and read it. And I'm so passionate about helping people with grief. I wanted to get as much information in that book as I could. So it's an introduction to the EFT, the emotional freedom techniques that we've spoken about a minute ago, and it's got lots of other aspects and areas in there, like how emotional support can help, all about energy and how that can, what the role of your energy system is with grief, which is so important and so helpful. And there's 12 chapters, and at the end of each chapter I've got what I call self-love exercises. So you can work through those exercises, again, to help you be a little bit more informed and understand your own grief. Because historically, particularly in the West, we're renowned for don't talk about grief, put it aside, stiff upper lips, keep busy. And I talk about the Keep Busy Brigade in my book because that's what we're taught we do. And all that does is suppress our emotions, push them down, and they come back up later in life, where I see clients 30, 40, 50 years later where they're still really grieving and in the rawness of grief, which is not healthy.
Yeah, we're not great at this country at talking about grief, are we? And I think other countries and cultures do it much better than us.
Absolutely.
But can you share how EFT helped you specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did the classic. I went along to a course where I thought, as I'd always been trained, sort of keep your emotions in. So I went along to an EFT course thinking, well, I'm going to keep all my emotions in. I'll just see how this pans out, sort of thing. So I went along quite afraid, quite nervous about it, but also hoping that it'd be something that helped me. Literally in 5 minutes, I was crying my eyes out as somebody was tapping on me because everything came out, because it was sort of there, it was bubbling away. Yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to that it's just under the surface all the time. And literally immediately I felt something different. I could feel within me that something had changed. Yeah. Perhaps it's hard to describe what, but something felt a little bit lighter. And that was the first time I'd felt a little bit lighter since my husband had died. So I knew there was something in it. Yeah. And that was literally in a room full of people, almost a demonstration as opposed to any actual personal EFT help. So I thought, well, if this happens in this environment, then if I have some personal work done, work with a therapist, it's going to make a massive difference. And it really, really made a huge difference. Yeah. It's a beautiful tool to help those grieving.
Well, when my son Matthew died, it was a few months before I wanted to reach out and do something about it. I felt like I wanted to just sit in that grief and feel it, and I wasn't in a rush to try and fix it. I don't know why, whether that's just what I needed to do. And it's not something you can rush, and it's something, you can't force people to, seek help. People have got to do it in their own time, haven't they? Yeah, but definitely. I remember the first time I went to do some tapping with a colleague of mine that lives in Kenilworth, and I just thought, I don't even know where to start. There were so many layers, as there normally are.
Absolutely.
And he said to me, and I said to him, I just don't know where to start. And he said, well, how do you feel? And I said, I just feel like I have this massive big hole in my torso. Yeah. You can actually see through this hole and it hurts. And he said, well, let's start there. And we started this tapping. And after a few rounds, he said, just check out now how you're feeling. And I couldn't feel that hole. I couldn't see that hole. But what I did get, I got an image of my son Matthew smiling at me saying, Mum, you know all of this stuff, just let it go. Yeah. You know I'm fine. Wow. And when I told my colleague, he said, I got that same message too.
Oh, wow.
Now, obviously, it didn't clear my grief in one session, but it loosened something really big. And it loosened something so that from that point onwards, I could start moving forward. And I went back every 2 weeks because it just felt amazing. Yeah. So I think once you experience that, you just be compassionate about it, and you want to tell everybody about it, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And no, it's really similar. And I think a couple of points really that I think are important to just pull out of that as well is that EFT works in a really holistic way. It's not just about your thoughts. It's not just about your behaviour. It's not just about the physical things you're feeling. It's about your feelings within your body as well. So, you said that big hole. So we can work within EFT with you can come in at any angle, and any angle will help. And your body will know the right angle for you to come in on, whether it's a bodily feeling or a thought repetitive looping thought, or whether it is a main feeling that's anger or something, that's why EFT is such a wonderful tool, because it can come in on any of those different angles.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really, really important too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, your new book, Joy Beyond Grief, which I like to keep mentioning because it is amazing.
Bless you, thank you.
It actually won an award yesterday, the Janie Lee Grace Platinum Awards for 2023. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now, I've read your book and it is amazing, but I didn't realise until I'd read your book, and I've known you for a few years now, I didn't realise that you'd lost your husband very suddenly 20 years ago. And as I delve deeper into conversations with others working in the field of grief, I'm beginning to realise that many people who work in this field have experienced a significant loss. And it's their personal tragic backstories that motivate them to want to help others going through similar journeys. And there's something beautiful about this, isn't there?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I think that, again, there's lots of layers within that as well. I think it's a passion. It becomes a passion because if you found something that helps you, it's a natural instinct, I believe, of people to then want to help others. Yeah. So I think that's a beautiful gift, which I know we're perhaps speaking about in a minute, but it really is a beautiful gift to be able to go to other people that there is something that you can do if you want to, if it's all in everybody's individual timing, obviously, as we've just spoken about. But I think it's really important for people to I don't know, I think it's when something happens to you that's so massive and so traumatic, if you do find your way out of it, then you do just want to spread that word. And I think that is the bottom line. And there is something that can come out of it and that's positive. Hence the title, Joy Beyond Grief.
I love that.
It can be a little bit triggering for some people, but, I sort of wanted that in a way I never wanted to work with people and just say, let's just get to a place that's all right. I can just sort of about get along now. I wanted to say that, yes, grief will always be there and that loss will always be there, but actually you can transform some of those feelings and some of that emotion and some of that energy into something amazing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think that's what's really, really, really important, to help people to see that, because that's not spoken about anywhere. At all.
And I think the title of your book is so important. And if it triggers people, then there's work to do, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Because I can sit here now, it'll be 7 years in October since Matthew's gone. And obviously I still miss him.
Yeah.
And that will always be the case. And it'll always be sad. But I do have a lovely life now.
Yeah.
Now, that might sound like, how can she say that? But it's true.
Yeah.
And it's through the tapping therapy that's helped me get to a place where I am now, where I've made peace.
Yeah.
I've made peace with my grief and I carry it now with love.
Yeah.
And there are days where I might be triggered by a song, or I see somebody that looks like Matthew, and I accept that is all part and parcel of the experience. Yeah. But most of the time now, I'm honouring him by living my best life.
Absolutely.
And, this podcast and our books hopefully will reach the people that need to hear this, so they can know that it is possible to feel joy after such a traumatic loss.
And I absolutely, and I think that's so important, because we are sort of programmed to, it's almost that, we've lost somebody, and we're almost expected to be in gloom for the rest of our lives. And there's no better way than to honour that person that's died than for you to be living the best life you can.
Yes.
That's just the most beautiful, whatever that means. I know of a gentleman that lost his father, and his father was a great walker. So he did loads of walking throughout his year, because that helped him to sort of honour his father after doing some tapping as well. So I think it is an amazing thing that you can actually help people to realise we don't just stop at getting over something or try and get, it's not a thing to get over anyway, or try and fix it. It's an integration. It's how are we going to integrate that beautiful person that we've lost into our lives moving forward. And by being the best that we can be, I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've gone on to write your book. You also host online grief cafes and grief retreats and grief training for other practitioners too. All of this must take up a lot of your time, Janice. So do you find this feeds your soul? Because for some people, they would find this very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that shows in to start with, I think that shows in training. So when I'm training practitioners, you can see that perhaps they haven't done as much work as they could have done, because it becomes really clear. Because grief is a subject you sort of can't hide behind. Maybe as a practitioner you can sort of keep a straight face when things are going on with different traumas, but grief it affects everybody and has done on some level, a loss particularly. So it really sort of shows. So I think it's really important that people do their own work. And I think, I say work, that actually just to clear things that are stuck. And as you know, when you work with EFT, you get all these realizations about yourself. Yeah. When I first started working with the EFT after Andy died, I never realized how much it would help with my father's loss when I was 14, 1981. Yeah. And all of a sudden I started to clear things, and I could see why I acted in certain ways. Yeah. And no better example than when Andy died, I just started rebelling. I just turned into a 14-year-old rebelling, because that's what I did last time when I lost somebody that I really loved. So I think things like that really sort of show how much EFT can help. And it does take a lot of my time up doing all these different things, but it is the passion that drives me to help people, and that I love, and I can see people change, and I can see people moving through their grieving process, integrating it into their lives, and I would believe having a much happier life than they may perhaps have done if they'd have just sat in it. There's also that sort of feeling that, I need to feel gloomy to honour them. I need to never, ever be happy again to be honouring. It's absolutely the polar reverse, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's the reverse of that. So if I can help people to find that peace perhaps to start with, and then look at how can you use that energy, that massive amount of energy, in a positive way that makes your heart sing. Yeah. And that's sort of different for everyone. And creativity really comes up in that. I've worked with a lot of clients that when they start to become a little bit more peaceful with their loss and perhaps shift through some different emotions that have been stuck for them, they start to realise, that creativity is great. Painting or drawing, or one lady I know had lots of tattoos, but for her that was that creative way, as and those things are so important that people don't see if they don't start to be able to help themselves with that grief.
Yeah, because they do say like time is a healer. Yeah. But I say time doesn't heal you.
Yeah.
It's how we process our experience. Yeah. We are the healers, aren't we?
Absolutely.
If we sit and wait for time to heal us, we're just going to stagnate.
Absolutely.
We have to put the work in. Yeah. And EFT, this tapping therapy, is just an amazing tool to help us move forward, isn't it? Yeah. It is fantastic.
Amazing. One of my chapter titles is Time Won't Heal, but Tapping Will.
Yes.
Because I felt so passionate about that.
Yeah.
Because it's not about time passing. Time passing will have some effect, but it's not, you're still going to be stuck if you're stuck.
Yeah.
And so many people are stuck, and it's so sad to see, because it's a natural process. And it's only really with the way our society is that things have got stuck. So if we can help shift and move that for a lot of people, then I'm definitely keeping doing what I'm doing.
So apart from the EFT, the tapping and Matrix Reimprinting, what other things helped you navigate your grief journey, Janice?
I think my first chapter is about emotional support, and I think if people can find, as a really first step, if they can find some sort of emotional support, and I really respect that some people haven't got that. Yeah. And I think that's perhaps where EFT therapists can come in, because they can be really, really helpful. But a friend, even a work colleague, family, to just be there. Don't have to do anything. I write about grief buddies, where you sort of say to that person, you just going to be, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have to know about loss or grief, but just be there to listen to me or sit with me when I cry. And it sort of gives that person permission to help. So grief buddies can be quite a nice way forward, but emotional support's really good. self-care, love yourself, do things that make your heart sing a little bit.
Yeah.
And being in the moment is another really important one, I feel, with grief. If you can just try and be in any moment and look around and see what you see, hear what you hear, they can be really helpful to stop you going back with perhaps traumatic thoughts of your loss or projecting forward without the person, which is going to happen. But if we can be in that moment, that's a lovely little tip for helping people just to have some peace.
Yes, yeah. Because it's easy to get sucked out of the moment by your thoughts dragging you into what ifs and, all the memories that haunt you or the thinking about the future without that person. But if you can just sit in that moment and be still and grounded and just calm your mind, even if it's just for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can build on that, can't you? It's so healing.
Yeah, it really, really is.
So can you share an example of how EFT helps one of your clients? Because listeners do like to hear stories.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
One that always comes to mind first, I'm not really sure why, but it was where Matrix Reimprinting really helped. So it was where we sort of go into a situation and we tap on that younger person when it actually happened, to clear trauma, to clear emotions, and then maybe just change the picture around a little bit. Of course, we don't do ridiculous things like make that person still alive, because that just doesn't make any sense. But what we do is perhaps move a few things around. And one beautiful young client that I work with, her partner had terminal cancer, and as he was really poorly in the hospital bed, she went one day and she kicked off her shoes to sit comfortably with him. He got out of bed to go to the toilet, and he tripped over her shoes and fell over and just bumped himself a little bit, nothing major, but with his condition, being very, very poorly, she was really concerned. So she was all sorry at the time, but that moment passed and he died, and that was one thing that was haunting her. Just, it's those things that perhaps you don't think are going to be the things that haunt you, and that kept going over and over in her mind. So we went back into that space where she was and tapped on that younger her for all that, feeling guilty and angry with herself. So we did a lot of tapping there, and we just moved the picture around a little bit, and she actually spoke to her partner in that picture. We talk about talking to his higher self, that part of him that is now, okay, everything's different now in wherever you are. We'll talk about that in a minute. But she and that just totally changed her. That totally changed. Actually, this lady was a singer, and she just hadn't sung since. And this was 6-7 months later, and she started singing again. Yeah, it just cleared that thought that just kept looping and looping and looping and looping around. Other people at funerals, at the funeral where something perhaps happened that they wish hadn't happened, or people where they wish things had happened that didn't, and vice versa, or I said something I wish I hadn't said, or I hadn't said something that I wish I had. The EFT and the Matrix Reimprinting can really help with that, and that is something that I see so much with clients, because everyone's trying to make sense of something they can't make sense of. So they turn inwards, or if I'd have done this or I'd have done that, which eats away and keeps your grief stuck. Or outside, you blame someone else for it, which equally you've got no control over. So either of those two don't really help. So we work to really shift and change it. And that's what I mean when you unstick things and move through grief. I love Matrix Reimprinting. I've used it so much myself because we can't change what's happened in the past. No. But we can change how we hold it inside. Absolutely, and that's the magic of it, isn't it? But we can also use it for sort of future we can.
Printing
Definitely.
as well. So that's a really interesting topic as well. But it's been a massive part of my healing journey, Matrix Reimprinting. So can you tell us a little bit about your grief retreats and what people can expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run my grief retreats with a colleague of mine, Catherine Banks. I went on her meditation training course, and then she come on my EFT training course. So we've worked together for a long while now, and we run them together, and we run twice a year. It's sort of from a Friday to a Monday. And they're really a place to come. It's quite structured, but it moves. It's a little journey in itself from the Friday night to the Monday. You can join in the activities. You don't have to join in any if you don't want. We always have them in lovely locations. But we help people to move through perhaps something that's stuck within them, within a group environment. It's not a therapy. It's not a weekend of therapy. But we do lots of little exercises that can really help people. My Hearts of Grief that I use, that's in my book, and I use with my practitioners.
I love that.
Yeah, because it just helps people identify, what they're really feeling, because it can feel all so scattered that we actually help people just to come to identify perhaps where they could, take help further when they leave. But also lovely little letting go sort of ceremonies and understanding what that actually means, because often people think, I can't let go of the person I love, but it's not about that. And that's another thing that society's got very confused over, I think. So we do lots of meditations as well, and lots of real gentle activities of coming together and sharing some lovely food and lovely places.
It sounds like a lovely healing, nurturing space, and one day I will come along.
Definitely.
The dates just haven't coordinated right for me at the moment.
They will when they're ready, when it's ready,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your online bereavement cafes and how they work?
Oh, yeah, and that's a lovely thing. I love doing these. So it's only once a month. We may change that a little bit and increase that, but it's once a month. It's for an hour and a half, and anyone who's grieving, practitioner, anybody, can come along to that. We focus it around the tapping because that's what I know really can help people. So we have a little chat and we'll do some tapping. We might have a look at a different topic each week, perhaps physical pain, or again, perhaps letting go, what that means. Or if there's a topic that seems to be a lot of people experiencing something on that particular call, then we do some tapping around that. And then when we've done a little bit of clearing or a little bit of introduction to tapping, we sometimes do what we call positive tapping. So we just tap and perhaps bring in some peace or love or calm.
Yeah. And
then we end with a meditation. It's a very gentle online hour and a half, and you can join in or you can just sit and listen, so.
And there's something really healing about collective tapping with other people, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You could be tapping on maybe an issue that somebody else has discussed online. Yeah. And while you're tapping on that, it's working on you as well.
Definitely.
It's magical, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And especially when it's grief, because although it is a unique individual experience, there's no two ways about that, because you don't come into grief as a blank slate. You come into grief with all what's happened in your life before. Yeah. But there are common things. So, sadness or perhaps numbness or anger or regret or some feelings of hopelessness and things like that. So everyone can benefit as we tap with each person's feelings. So it's a lovely environment, actually. And people really feel quite nurtured in that, is the feedback we get. So
yeah, it's very true, because although all our individual grief journeys are very different, we do share the same emotions and intensities at different times, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
So we can come together.
Yeah.
So you're never alone.
No, that's right. And that's another, way for people and an introduction in, really. So people can always join on that.
Yeah. So how would you describe grief to someone who has never had a significant loss? Because there may be people listening to this thinking, well, I've never really lost anybody. I don't know what it feels like. How would we describe it?
Hell. In one word that maybe I shouldn't use. Yeah. But absolute nightmare. Well, it certainly was for me and for my clients and friends that have lost people. Yeah. Absolute feels like there aren't words for it, actually. The pain, the emotional pain, sometimes the physical pain that goes along with it is excruciating. It is absolute. There's no way you can get away from it. Perhaps for a minute you do something in the rawness of grief, I'm talking. And, you try and do something to get away from it, and then it'll hit you again. Because grief really does come in waves, and that's another normal aspect of it. So you might be okay for a bit, doing something that you smile about, and then memory comes in and it hits you, and just go down into this pit.
Yeah.
And then something will happen where you feel a little bit happy again, then you feel guilty about
Yeah.
feeling happy. And all of these things are normal. That is the one thing I'll say. Whatever you're feeling within your grief, it's normal.
Yeah.
You're not on your own, but it's a difficult place to be. It's not easy, is it? And that's why I do what I do, because I can see how much it can help people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why it's important to me.
Good. Well, did you find people were unsure how to be around you when Andy died? And, some people don't know what to say, so they don't say anything, or, like we've all experienced people crossing the road to avoid us.
Yeah.
Did you find this? Was this your experience?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think what's another common thing is often up until the funeral, there's a lot of support.
Yeah.
And there's plans being made, there's something being done. We're getting used to our rituals that we do. Agreeably, that all went to pot a little bit with COVID, but that's what happens up until the funeral. After the funeral, it always appears, I definitely experience this, and I know from my clients, they often feel the same. Everyone goes back to their life, their normal life.
Yes.
And your life is never normal again in that context. And then people start to sort of dwindle a little bit. As you said, people crossed the road with me, didn't know what to say. And then for me as well, that was really difficult. And I'm going to say this because I think it's really important for listeners to hear. Some of Andy's friends decided that I was single then. And it might be nice if we could get to know Janice a little bit better.
Oh, dear.
Which was really hard because they were friends I wanted to turn to, but it made me feel that I couldn't turn to them.
Oh, that's such a shame.
And I think I'm saying this because I think it does happen, to different people. So you're not alone if that does happen to you, and it's important to sort of voice that, I think, as well.
Yeah.
But people, and I had friends that sort of said, "Oh, we'd love to come and see you, but it just upsets me too much." And I used to think, really upsets you too much?
Yeah.
I'm not feeling so hot myself. And that really was difficult. And that's another part, and I know yourself, that's another part of why I do what I do, because I want people to, let's be honest, let's talk about it, let's work out what can be said, or let's work out what we can do to help. That doesn't feel uncomfortable for anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I'm on a mission to help society become more grief literate and stop feeling so bloody awkward about it.
Absolutely. Me too.
Communication is the key, isn't it?
It is. And everyone's so frightened. That's the other thing. While you're in fear, it's impossible to do anything with a level head. So people are so frightened about dying, so frightened about death, that it's all just not spoken about, swept under the carpet.
Yes.
Well, everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to experience grief and loss. So I think it is a subject that, as we're doing today, is a wise thing to be doing.
Yeah, nobody gets out of this alive.
That's right, absolutely.
It's a great journey, but death is the end.
It is, it's definitely going to be there.
And, people need to talk about it.
Yeah.
But what words would you choose to express your condolences to someone? Do you have that magic formula? Because it is hard to get it right, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a magic formula. Let me know, Louise, when we come across one.
Yeah.
But I think, it is difficult. It is different for clients and friends as well, But I'll often say, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Because that's a heartfelt thing. I am sorry for your loss. If it's somebody I don't know, I'm sorry for your loss. If it's somebody I do know, I might say, I'm sorry for, losing so-and-so, for that loss you've experienced. And I think it's the simple things of sort of those simple sort of comments, really, the most important. Never sort of, I know how you feel, because no one can know how anybody else is feeling. And you don't want to start saying, oh, well, I know, can you imagine me going with my clients? Well, I know how you feel because I lost my husband. It's like, number one, I don't know how they feel. Number two, I'm not talking about me. I'm trying to be there for them. So there's no point talking about my loss. So I think it's just those simple things of, I'm here if you want to listen. I'm here to listen to you if you want to talk.
Yeah.
I'm here to sit with you if you want to sit. Is there anything practical I can do to help? Often that can be quite a nice comment for people. Is there anything practical I can do just to help you. I'm here if you need any help.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just important to say something, acknowledge that person's loss, because when people ignore it, that's worse, isn't it?
Definitely.
So even if they say something that sounds a little bit clumsy or doesn't land well, just read the intention behind it, because if they say nothing at all, that is worse, isn't it?
Yeah,
if it's ignored.
It's again, it's the sort of thing that we fall into in society. We don't just sort of say what we mean from a heart space, So sometimes people will get it wrong, and you just say, "Oh, that hurt a bit. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." And you could actually have a conversation, but because we don't, it all just gets very tense, and people don't know what to do. But I think it's better to say something, because otherwise it's the massive elephant in the room.
Yeah, definitely. So apart from all the amazing support you offer through the work you do, can you recommend any other books or films or podcasts or groups to support people who are grieving?
Well, certainly your books, Louise. Goes without saying.
I'll pay you later.
Yes. Letters Matthew and The Gift of Grief.
Thank
definitely
you.
really, really, really helpful books to read, I think. So definitely I would recommend your books. And I think there's some organisations that are quite helpful as well. That I use sometimes for with my work, my training. Kids Bereavement UK, I think, is a really good one. There's lots of different types of training. It might be just for an hour's training. Sometimes it's for practitioners. Sometimes it's just to help young people. And I think going back to when I lost my dad when I was younger and thinking about my children, that would be something that I wish I'd have sort of known about, or they'd been there then. So I think that's great. I think some of the Sue Ryder stuff now, she's doing a lot of work that can be really helpful and really down to earth. With some practical help, which is always again really helpful. And of course these podcasts like we're doing.
Yes. Well, I will put these links in the show notes so people can check them out. And also a link to your book as well. Okay. So for anyone who's listening to this episode who's just lost a loved one, or even for others who have been stuck in grief for years, what words of wisdom could you share, Janice, to maybe help them loosen their grief in some way? Yeah,
it is difficult. And everybody has a moment when they feel that they really want perhaps some help to help themselves. So it's really individual. So just know that there is help out there. I mean, I think knowing that there is help and support, and that's genuine help and support, and, look up perhaps an EFT practitioner in your area. I really would recommend that, because, all the practitioners I know do a free consultation, so you can just chat with them. And it's really important that you feel comfortable and trust that practitioner, because you're opening up, your heart that feels broken anyway. To somebody you don't know, and just go. And if you speak to 10 and then you find the 11th one really feels comfortable with, that's perfect. And all practitioners understand that. So I think, to do that, but just to allow yourself to know whatever you're feeling is normal and natural. And to just try and even just name some of your emotions sometimes, just to acknowledge that today I'm feeling really horrible, and that's okay to feel that. It's not nice, but it's okay to feel that. And try as hard as you can to honour how you're feeling, to not push it under the carpet. We do have to be strong at some points. I remember having to really smile as I put my kiddies on the bus to go to school when I really did not feel like smiling. So we do have to have those moments where we're strong. But I also had moments where I was crying in front of them, where I'd say, and I think this is really important with children as well, or even any loved ones, is that I am crying and I'm really upset, but you're safe. You're safe with me, because that's the fear with a lot of children. This is, talking specifically in that area, but, that's what they fear, that mum's falling apart. Oh no, that's my survival. But if you let them know, yes, you're really upset, as they are, and you're showing them it's okay to show emotion, which is really, really important. It's so okay. Important, crying, allow yourself to cry. I cannot tell you all the physical benefits of crying. It'll lower your blood pressure, your immune system will be benefiting for it. It'll release those oxytocin that happy hormone. It's not going to be happy, but it's just going to help you feel a little bit better. So crying's okay.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to cry.
Yeah, if people see us crying, they think we need fixing, but we don't.
No
it's
one
all
needs
part
fixing.
of the process,
Yeah.
isn't it?
There's nothing
And
to
going back
fix.
to the children, it's amazing how resilient children are.
Absolutely.
And they just, I think it's important to be honest with them, isn't it?
I
And to
agree.
not sugar it too much.
I agree.
And to be able to show your emotions in front of them, but to let them know that it's safe. And, it's so important.
It is really, really important.
So where are you in your grief journey now?
Oh, wow. Fabulous question. I like that question. Well, I feel I'm at that place of transformation where my life I can see the gifts that have come out of my grief. And for some people, maybe the word gifts isn't the right word for them, but that transformation of I've learned or I've understood now a bit more of my own purpose in life around my grief. I think of Andy a lot. I miss him like mad. I wish he was here. But I wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now, which is helping others. I think I might have gone down a little bit more of a selfish route. So I can see how I am a different person. And that's an honouring of him.
Yes.
Because I'm much more caring for others and to help others in this situation, in a grieving situation now, which I think is definitely a gift in itself.
Definitely, yes, yeah. And I think there's a gift in everything.
Yeah.
But it might be hard to see sometimes.
Absolutely, it might be hard to see.
Yeah. And I feel personally that I've got a superpower now.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing has happened.
Yeah.
So whatever else life has to throw at me, I think, well, I've survived that. I can survive anything. And it's given me almost like, before I'm still very quiet, but it's given me this superpower. I don't really care what people think about me anymore.
Yeah.
And it's given me the confidence to speak out and be more myself. Yeah. So there are a lot of things that can come out of it. Would I have chosen this? No.
Of course not.
None of us would have chosen this path. No. But it's making the best of it, isn't it? And
it is,
and recognising those gifts and acknowledging them and being grateful for them.
Yeah.
Because it's accepting that something nice has come out of something that's been pretty horrible.
Yeah.
But
definitely. And I think, just a little quick story about when my mother died, actually, in 2017. We'd never really got on very well. It was, quite upside down, crazy relationship I had with my mother. It was a bit bonkers. But when she was poorly, I'd done a lot of tapping on that relationship because for myself, and I was just tapping on me and how I was feeling about it. Yeah. And as she got more and more poorly, and she started to sort of just gentle up a little bit. Along with my tapping, I come to a place of forgiveness with her. Oh. And that was a definite gift. Yeah. So although it was perhaps for a month, we had a totally different relationship. And that forgiveness, I don't believe I'd have ever come to if I hadn't have done the tapping that I did with myself. And so when my mum died after, about a month after that, that I suddenly went, wow, I can forgive her, forgive myself, whatever needed it. It felt so different that when she passed, I felt so much more at peace immediately. Because I think if that hadn't have happened, who knows? But if it hadn't have happened, I'd have started to feel guilty. I should have done this and all those years. Yeah. But actually, we both come to a place of forgiveness and peace. And I think that's another true gift in the tapping.
That's beautiful, isn't it? That can give you some comfort.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
At the end you came together and connected.
Yeah, and
you felt that love that you had for each other.
Yeah, and we sort of felt that genuine love. And even though it's only like a month, it was okay. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it happened. Yeah. So there's no I wish it had been longer. You don't feel like that when you've resolved something. Yeah. It's just beautiful to have moved into that space when she passed, of us both feeling really different about each other, which was beautiful.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Now, do you have any special ways or family rituals to remember any of your loved ones?
I think these are really quite important. It's really quite nice. I mean, and again, it's not for everyone. So everyone's different, and be respectful to you, what feels right for you.
Yeah.
And it may change from year to year, often anniversaries. We started off coming together, me and my daughters, on the day he died, coming together and just being with each other quite quietly and just reflecting. And then at one point we decided, no, we're going to meet on his birthday.
Yeah.
So we stopped meeting on the day that he died and we started meeting on his birthday. And it just felt so much better for us to do that. So we'd often go walking. We spread his ashes in a beautiful place. So we would often go walking there on his birthday and have a nice day together, a meal and a cheers to my husband, which felt right for me and my daughters. And we've sort of done that ever since, really. But there's so many ways that you can honour or have little rituals. You can light candles, a million ways. Meditate, you can go out with friends. I think it is, again, nice to do something if it feels right, because that's another way of integrating that person, called continuing bonds, where you actually keep that person with you as you're moving forward in your life.
Yes.
And I think that's another lovely way of honouring them. But decide for yourself and see what feels right.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're still part of our life, aren't they? So do whatever feels right for you.
Yeah.
So, Janice, what are your thoughts about the afterlife?
Oh, big question, Louise. How long have we got? We could be here a while. So my thoughts about the afterlife, interesting, and I'm just going to go back a little bit here, because when my dad died, I went through, I hate God. Why would he do this? He was supposed to be a good God, and why has he killed my dad? I wasn't really brought up in a religious family, but that's what I come to the conclusion of. And I also got very frightened. Oh, if you can do that to my dad, what else can he do?
Right.
So that's what God become to me. And then it all just faded away, allegedly faded away, but was in my subconscious somewhere over the years as I sort of grew up. And then when my husband died, it sort of brought all that back up a bit again. And what's going on in this world? It's not a nice place. And I started to look at different religions and different viewpoints. And really, I think what's been interesting, and I think I've really changed since I've been working with lots of my clients, because I've seen so many times that when people have started to clear their pain, they seem to have a deeper connection to the person that's died. And perhaps we'll talk about this in a minute, different signs and things. But so my personal belief now is that we are a soul having a human experience.
Yes.
We are a soul that comes here, however crazy this human experience is. And boy, oh boy, at this time in the world, it is bonkers. Yeah. But we've come here to have that human experience, to feel those feelings and express that and understand and perhaps learn a little bit along the way. So my soul is happy. Always, constantly, but my human being is it goes up and down.
Yeah.
So that's my belief, and it feels really comfortable for me. And again, and this is, I can only speak from my experience, but even when I've worked with people that don't have many spiritual beliefs, as they start to maneuver through stuck emotions and feelings with their grief, they become more spiritual.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
It was really, I didn't see that come in, but, that's something that's come up over and over again with clients. Yeah. It's not something I really speak about, but I just see developing as they start to move through their grieving experience.
Well, I've had guests on my podcast, people that don't believe in God, atheists. Yeah. And because I'm a spiritual person myself, and I think it's really interesting how we all, have our own thoughts and beliefs about what happens to us. And I understand, like my daughter calls herself a bad atheist because she said, when you die, that's the end. But, if a white feather falls at a timely, spot, moment, she'll say, oh, that was Matthew. Yeah. And then she'll think, oh, no, I'm an atheist. But if a robin visits her, oh, that was Matthew. And I think I love it how she describes herself as a bad atheist. So just sort of fluttering on the edges of, this other belief. And I think that people that, don't have a belief, they can take comfort from the memories of their loved ones.
Absolutely.
And, we all have our own ways of dealing with it. But personally, I've just had so many experiences, probably like you,
Yeah.
that I just know.
Yeah.
But then you would say somebody that, is an atheist, I just know.
Yeah.
We're all so different, aren't we?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. To all our listeners, whatever your beliefs are, whatever your thoughts are, grief doesn't protect. None of it protects us from the experience of grief, does it?
No.
We still feel the same stuff.
Yeah, we do.
But it is interesting to hear different people's perspectives on this subject. But do you believe our loved ones can give us signs?
Yes, I do. And I'll just come back for a moment, because the other thing is with the EFT, whatever your belief system is, EFT works with it.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think that's really important. So whether you're religious, whatever religion you gives you comfort, then EFT can work within that. And that is what's the beauty for that. Signs. Oh, yes. I write about it in my book with buzzards. Because my husband used to fly buzzards. So we used to have buzzards there, and he used to fly them, not always as successfully as he'd like to think he did, but he was quite good sometimes to sit in a tree because they didn't want to come down, but always buzzards. And since my husband dies, it's buzzards. And a couple of occasions, where I've been really down. I'm just, Andy, just show me a sign. Go around the corner. There's a buzzard sat on the telegraph pole. And one day going to my work, there was 4 buzzards on 4 telegraph poles as I went round the corner, as I asked for something.
That's a big sign.
That's a big sign. 4 buzzards on 4 telegraph poles. That's like, really, I don't think you see that. And one banged into my kitchen window once. Buzzards do not bang into kitchen windows, I can tell you. So that made me chuckle a bit as well. But absolutely. And when me and my girls are out and we see buzzards, we feel close to them.
Yeah.
And whatever's going on there, it's okay. We feel closer. So that's lovely. So buzzards is my thing. Often something in nature is for a lot of people.
Yes.
But everyone's got different signs, and there's lots of different signs. And really, again, clearing that bit of that stuck emotional pain can really help people to feel that heart connection even more, thus showing you signs. So I think that's something I've just seen throughout the years as well.
Absolutely. 'Cause I'm sure those signs are always there, but it's depending on where you are as to whether you pick up on them and see them and connect with them.
Yeah,
but it gives me a lot of comfort, when you're thinking about a loved one and then a white feather just drops 3 feet from your feet, you think, that's a sign to say, I'm still here with you.
Yeah.
When a little robin comes and looks through the window and tweets at you, it can be a rainbow at a particular time. It can be a heart-shaped cloud for me. There's so many things out there that, I notice. And, if it gives me comfort, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. And sometimes they can be internal things. You can just think, I think, I'm dilemmaing over some decision or something.
Yeah.
I think, Andy would think that. And it just come into my mind, an alternative.
Yeah.
So it can be sort of internal things as well.
You get these little downloads and you think, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could give your loved ones a message, what would you like to say?
Wow. That's interesting, isn't it? And I sort of had that dilemma when my husband died, because he just died suddenly. So it was one of those occasions where I couldn't say goodbye. I couldn't do anything. And I remember thinking, well, I'd say this, I'd say that. And I was getting myself really quite manic about what I should have said or I could have said. I was in that situation. I love you.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that now.
That's all
It
you
says
need,
it. It says it all to me now. All I need to say is I love you.
Yeah.
It's because love is such a massive, powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is, it covers everything.
And that is a perfect place to end this podcast.
It is indeed.
Thank you, Janice, for being my guest and sharing your story. I love how you have used the pain of grief as a driving force to make a positive impact, and it's so inspiring. I had a strong feeling you were going to be a fantastic guest, and I was not mistaken. And your willingness to share your story will undoubtedly benefit lots of people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you very much.
Losing your partner suddenly is an unimaginable tragedy that can leave you feeling utterly devastated and lost. In these heart-wrenching moments, it's important to remember to take things one step at a time. Initially, you may find yourself dealing with overwhelming shock and disbelief, unable to fully comprehend the weight of your situation. Surrounding yourself with a support system of friends and family who can provide comfort and guidance during this difficult time is crucial. Activities such as planning a memorial service or handling legal matters might demand your immediate attention. But remember to prioritise self-care too. Give yourself permission to grieve, rest and heal. If you would like more information about EFT tapping therapy and Matrix Reimprinting, or any other topics we talked about today, please check out the show notes. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. If you would like to join me on my social media groups, check out the show notes for all the links, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.